Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm sure most of you guys are enjoying a really awesome fall season, but here in Calgary, we don't really get a fall. It basically just goes from summer to winter, and we had a quite hefty snowfall last weekend, so that prompted this video. So I thought I'd give you guys a little knitting tutorial on how to make some really simple but also really cute toques that you can keep your head warm with this winter. So yeah, basically the rundown of this video is going to be me going over the materials you need, and then I'll get into how to actually make the hat. As you can see, each brim is exactly the same. Double fold over. And then we're going to get into the middle part, the inside, the guts of the toque. And then the casting off and the finishing the whole of the toque is actually going to be the same for every toque as well. So those will kind of all be mushed together. We've got 3 different styles. So you can basically make a hat for anyone. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna go over materials that I'm gonna use for these projects. They're all going to be made with chunky yarn, but I'll kind of explain the differences between the yarns because even though I'm using chunky yarn for all of them, every yarn is going to be a little bit different. So for one of my hats, I'm going to use Woolies Thick and Quick from Lion brand, like I used in my last project. I feel like last time I told you guys it was 100% acrylic, which was a lie. It's actually 20% wool as well. Yeah, I bought this color last year and I think it's really pretty. I just haven't used it for anything because it's not really like my style. But yeah, since I have a little bit more of this, I'm going to use it for the hat that is going to take the most wool, which I think is the braided hat. So this one's going to be pretty durable. I throw this yarn in the washing machine and in the dryer. It doesn't shrink because it's only 20% wool. Yeah, it's just easy to take care of. Lasts for a long time, pretty good yarn. So the second one I'm going to be using is this yarn right here. Also a chunky weight. This one feels a little bit thicker. It looks like to be about the same thickness, but it just feels a little bit thicker to me. This one's 100% wool. So this one, the care instructions say to hand wash and air dry. I have a little bit less of it because there's only 60 yards in each skein. So I'm going to use this one for the most basic hat because it takes the least amount of yarn. And I think like the little bit of variation in color is going to be really pretty for a simple hat. So yeah, that's that one. And then the last one is this one. It is a blend of alpaca and merino wool. This one is super soft. There appears to be a lot of it, so I might only need to use 1 skein. This one has, yeah, does it say 125 meters? It is thinner than the other 2, so I'm going to use this one for the hat that I want to be a little bit more slouchy. Okay, I'm going to use stitch markers to keep track of my stitches when I'm going to get to the point in the hats when I need to do decreases. These are cable needles. Ones we're going to use for the braid hat. You can get these or ones that look similar. You can get plastic ones at Michael's or most yarn stores. We're going to use 10mm circular needles for every hat. So you only need 1 set of needles no matter which hat you're going to make. Needle for sewing in the ends and scissors for cutting yarn. So when I make a toque to fit my head with 10mm needles, I pretty much always cast on 46 stitches. I have like probably an average adult sized head. If you have a bigger head, you can cast on 48. If you have a smaller head, cast on 42 or 44. Or just try this size and see where that gets you. But yeah, I have basically like the average adult sized head, and I cast on 46 stitches. So that's pretty much like generally just a little bit longer than my arm span. This wool's a little bit thicker, so I'm gonna err on the side of caution. So yeah, I'm just gonna cast on 46 stitches. Okay, so once you've cast on, make sure that all of your stitches are lined up. You don't have anything twisted. Then we're just going to knit in the round. So we're just going to do knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, continue around. Okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna start over and double up the yarn for the ribbing, just because it's really cold here in Calgary, and I want this to be a cozier hat. This yarn is supposed to be like a chunky, but honestly it's not that much thicker than a worsted. So, if you don't have chunky yarn, you can also do this. You can, if you have 2 balls of worsted yarn that you want to use, yeah, you can just double up your yarn like this and it'll make it thicker and more chunky looking. Or more chunky feeling. Okay, start again. You can see each hat has a double brim or like a roll up brim. If you don't want a double brim on your hat, if you just want a regular brim like this, for when I do the brim or the ribbing here, I say do 20 stitches, just do 10. Do half, and then you'll just have a regular hat with no roll up brim. So we've done 32 rows of the knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl pattern. As you can see, we've got, it's a little bit stretchy here, but we've got knit, purl, right around here. So we're going to start doing decreases. I want them mostly evenly spaced, but because we have 46 stitches in the row, and I want to keep these the knit row in the forefront when we do a decrease. So I'm going to just measure out keeping them in front. So to split 46 into kind of 4 pretty close to even sections, I'm going to do 3 of sections of 12 and then 1 of 10. And I'm going to do the 10 at the back so that it's more cinched at the back. Okay, so from where I am, I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to mark a knit row here. I'm going to count out 12 and mark another knit row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. and 12 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then it should be 10 to the first one that we placed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So to start our first decrease row, I'm going to knit 1 purl. Okay, and then I'm going to knit these two together so that the row that I have marked out here stays in front when I knit these 2 stitches together. So you see that? And then I'm just going to continue purl, knit, purl until we get to the next stitch that we've marked out. Oh, sorry, this one. We're going to knit these 2 stitches together so that, again, the one that we've marked out stays in front. So insert our needle through both stitches, around and through, and continue till we get to our next stitch marker. Okay, we're going to knit these 2 together. Okay, we're going to knit these 2 together. And that completes our first row of decreases. So on our next row, we're going to knit right up to our marked stitch. So now this is our next stitch that we would be working into. We're going to do the slip, 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 knit decrease so that we're decreasing from the other side and that this post is staying in front. So we're going to slip the stitch from the left needle to our right needle knitwise. So we're going to go in through the front, slip it over. Again, very important that you did that knitwise. And then you can slip the next one over purlwise. So now you have the first stitch slipped to your right needle knitwise, second stitch purlwise. Then you're going to take your left needle and purlwise go in back into the stitches that are on your right needle. You're going to counterclockwise bring your yarn around your right needle and then pull it through those 2 stitches so that we did the decrease, we brought it in this way. And as you can see, the post is still in front. I'm going to keep knitting up to the next one. Can do another one of those decreases. So again, slip over knitwise, slip over purlwise, insert back through, yarn over and through. And we're going to repeat that at every marked stitch. Okay, so we did all the decreases for the second row. Now we're just going to continue working up and decreasing the same way. So every time, so our next round, we're going to do the knit 2 together. And then the round after that, we're going to do the slip, slip, knit again. So that we keep working 1 stitch in on one side, and then the other side, and then the other side building up. Always keeping this stitch that we had marked out in front when we do the decreases. Continued decreasing until there are 14 stitches left. And now I'm just going to cast off all knitwise. So I'm going to knit 2, cast off, knit 1, cast off, okay, so I've cast it off. When I'm casting off in the round, I always like to go into kind of the first stitch that I cast off and knit 1 more to cast off, just because it closes up the round a little nicer. Okay, snip this. Now that we've done 20 rows for the ribbing with the yarn doubled up here, I'm going to make the rest of the hat with just 1 piece. So I'm just going to cut 1 of these balls and keep working with 1 piece. This one I'm just going to tuck behind and then I'll sew it in when I'm done the hat. So my next row is just going to be 1 row of knit stitch all the way around. There we go, back where we started. Now I want this hat to be a bit on the baggier side, so I'm going to add 4 stitches to this row. So I'm just going to do that by trying to evenly space them out. So there's 46 stitches on right now, divided by 4 is 2 times 12 and 2 times 11, basically. So I'm just going to knit 11 and then we're going to increase. 1. Then to increase, I'm just going to look in between the stitch I have on my right needle and the stitch I have on my left needle. We're going to find that bar that's in between. I'm going to slide it onto my left needle coming from underneath, and then I'm just going to knit into it. Then we're going to knit 12 and increase again. Then again, find that bar, increase here, knit 11, increase, and then a final 12 and an increase. Okay, now I'm just going to do 3 more rows of knit stitch all the way around. Maybe I'll put a stitch marker in here to keep track of where my row started. So yeah, we're going to do 3 more rows of just straight knit stitch. Okay, now that we've done 5 rows of knit stitch, we're going to do 5 rows of purl stitch. So we're just going to... And all right, so 5 rows of purl stitch, and now we're going to repeat this pattern. So basically we're going to do 5 rows of knit stitch again and then 5 rows of purl stitch again, so 10 more rows all together. So once we've repeated that pattern again, 5 rows of knit stitch, 5 rows of purl stitch, on our next we're going to do 5 rows of knit stitch again, but we're going to start decreasing to close in the top of the hat. So I've got 50 stitches in the row right now. I'm going to try and do these decreases evenly, so I'm going to do 5 decreases around. So every 10 stitches there'll be a decrease, but a decrease takes 2 stitches. So basically I'm going to knit 8 stitches, decrease, which takes up 2 stitches. That's a total of 10. We do that 5 times, 50 stitches. Makes sense? So I'm going to knit knit 8. Then I'm just going to knit the next 2 together. So I'm just going to insert my needle knitwise through both stitches and knit them together. Then I'm going to do that exact same thing again, knit 8. And knit 2 together. Just going to repeat that 3 more times and we'll be back where we started. Okay, so that was our first row of decreases. So now I'm just going to do 1 row of knit stitches. So it'll be 45. Okay, so now we're going to do a second row of decreases. So now we've got 45 stitches in the row, so we're going to knit 6 and then knit 2 together. 1. Oh, I mean 7. So we knit 7 and then knit 2 together. Okay, so we're done our second row of decreases, which was the knit 7, then knit 2 together. Fourth row of knit stitches in this little set, we're just going to knit stitch all the way around. Okay, that was the 4th row in this set of knit stitches. So we're on the 5th one now, and we are going to do some decreases again. So this time we're going to knit 6 and then decrease. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to do a decrease. And we're going to do that all the way around. 2. Okay, so that was our 3rd decrease row and our 5th row of knit stitches in this grouping. So now, as to follow the pattern, we're going to do a row of purl. Well, we're going to do 5 rows of purl stitches, but this one is just with no decreases, just a straight up row of purl stitches. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of starting to get smaller at the top. So we're going to do more decreases in this row. So this time we are going to do 5 purl stitches and then purl 2 together. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just like a knit 2 together, we're just going to insert our needle purl-wise through the next 2 stitches and purl them together. And repeat. 2, okay, I'm at the end now. I'm just going to move my stitch marker up so that I can kind of see better where my rows are ending at this point, just because the decreases are making the start kind of shift over, if that makes sense. It's not necessary, well, it is pretty much lining up, but this will just help us see better where our rows are starting. So now we're going to do another row of just purl stitches. Okay, so that was our third row of purl stitches in this grouping. On to our fourth row, we're going to do decreases again. So this one is purl 4 and then purl 2 together. Okay, just gonna fold this up so it's not in my way as much. Okay, so now our last row of purl stitches for this grouping, and we're just going to do a straight up row of purls. So we've got 25 stitches on our needles right now. I think this is the last one, yep. Okay. So I'm just going to do one more row with decreases before I do a cast off row. So that we're casting off 20 stitches. Okay, this is our last cast off row. It's going to be a knit row. We've got 25 stitches. We're going down to 20. So we are going to knit 3 and then knit 2 together. Okay, now we're just going to cast off these 20 stitches knitwise. So just a regular cast off. So we're going to knit 2, cast off, knit 1, cast off. We're just going to do this all the way around. And like I usually do, I'm just going to kind of knit into my first cast off stitch here, just to kind of give it a tighter cast off. I'm going to leave a little bit of extra to tie the hole closed. So we're all cast off. Okay, so we've completed 20 rows of our knit purl, knit purl, knit purl pattern for the ribbing. So I'm just going to do, well, in this color, one full row of just knit stitch. Okay. Now that we're back to the start, I'm going to switch colors. I'm just going to snip the yarn of my old color. I'm going to switch to this one, so I'm just going to tie on here where I want to switch. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to make a couple of little stitch markers out of this yarn that we can slide around our yarn needle. If you have stitch markers that fit around the size of needle, then use those, but I don't, so I just make little loops. This out of the way. Okay. So where we put our braid is going to be a 9-stitch braid. Each kind of string within the braid is going to be 3 stitches, so it's going to be a 9-stitch braid. So we have 46 stitches in our hat right now. So 46 minus 9 is 37. So we've got 37. We want to purl 37 stitches and knit 9 stitches, which will be what our braid is in, the 9 stitches. And I don't want to place my braid exactly front and center. I'm kind of trying to offset it. So 37 divided by 2 is 18. 18 and 19. So I'm going to, so that I can offset this, I'm going to purl 14 stitches. 14. I'm going to place this marker on my right needle because I want to be able to keep track of where my braid is starting in every row. I'm going to knit 9. I'm going to place my marker on my right needle and then I'm going to purl the rest of the row. Okay, so our row pattern for the rest of this hat is going to be 1 row purl, next row knit, next row purl, next row knit. And for our braid, it's going to be, in the braid section, we are always using knit pattern, and we're going to cross over. Imagine each of these 3 clusters being a strand of the braid. We're going to cross over every 4 rows. So if you're kind of losing track of rows, we're always going to be crossing over on a knit row. So this first row here is a purl row, then we'll be doing a knit row, then a purl row, and then we're going to cross the braid, like 1 strand of the braid over in a cable on our next knit row. So I'll show you when we get there how we're going to do that, but just an easy way of keeping track. So now our next row, like I said, is a knit row. So basically it's just going to be a full knit around. Okay, and now another row of all purl, but knit inside the markers. So okay, so now we've done 3 rows and we're going to do a 4th row in this color. And this is where we're going to do our first braid cable crossover. So we're going to knit up to our stitch markers where our braid will be. Okay. So what we want to do is take the first 3 stitches. These are going to be our first strand of our braid that we're going to be crossing over the middle. So we're going to take our cable needle and I'm just going to slip those 3 stitches onto the cable needle, and we're going to leave them in front of our work because we're going to have them cross over in front of our next 3 stitches. So now, leaving these 3 stitches in front of our work, we're just going to knit into the next 3 stitches. Okay, so we still have these first 3 stitches out. We've knit into the next 3, and then we have our next 3 on our left needle. So now I'm just going to knit the 3 stitches off of our cable needle, or you can slip them back onto the left needle, but I'm just going to knit them off of the cable needle. 3. And then we're going to knit the last 3 stitches of our braid. So now, as you can see, those 3 that we had taken off have carried over in front of the other one. So we've kind of started our braid. And we can just finish the row out with knit stitches. Okay, so our next 3 rows, like I said before in the pattern, are going to be a row of purl, then a row of stitch, then a row of purl, always using the knit stitch in between these markers. So we'll do that, and then I'll show you our next cable. Okay, so we've done those 3 rows, and now we're on our next cable in our braid. So we're going to knit up to the cable. Okay, we're ready to start the cable. This time we're trying to pull the last 3 stitches over to do the next part of our braid. So we're going to knit the first 3 stitches because they aren't part of this cable. Okay, so now we're going to slip the next 3 stitches onto our cable needle. And then because we want the final 3 stitches to come over top in our cable, we're going to push these 3 stitches that we have on our cable needle to the back. And then we're going to knit the next 3 stitches in front. And then we're going to knit those 3 middle stitches off of our cable needle. Perfect. Put our stitch marker back on, and then continue knitting out the row. Perfect, so now you'll see we've crossed one over, crossed the next over. So the next time we do a cable, we're going to be crossing the first 3 over again. So basically we're going to repeat the last 8 rows that we did, just like we just did them. So we've got 1 row of purl, and then knitting in between our markers, 1 row of knit, 1 row of purl, but knitting in between our markers, and then we are going to do our first cable again. 1 row of purl, 1 row of knit, 1 row of purl, and then we're going to do the knit row with our second cable again. Okay, so as you can see, I repeated the pattern 2 more times. So now I have 4 cables kind of in my braid. And then I've also completed the next row, which was 1 row of purls but knits inside the stitches. So now I'm on a row of knit stitch all the way around, and I'm going to do 2 decreases in this row. So I'm going to knit 10 stitches, and then I'm going to knit the next 2 stitches together. And I'm going to knit 21 stitches. Then I'm going to knit 2 together again. And then knit 11 stitches to finish out the row. Okay, now I'm going to do a row of just purl stitches around, but knits between the markers. Okay, so now we're back to the next row that we have to do our cable on. So our cable is going to be coming this way. That's our next cable that we have to work on. But we're also going to do 4 decreases in this row. So we've got 44 stitches in the row. 44 divided by 4 is 11. Then take 2 away from that number for the decreases. So we are going to do 9 stitches and then decreases. They're not going to be perfectly evenly spaced just because I don't want to do decreases where I'm doing my cable. So if I have to do it, I'm going to count the stitches, but if a decrease is going to land in this cable area, then I'm just going to do it either directly before or directly after. We'll see where it's closest to the side when we knit. So we're going to go 9 stitches knitting, 1, and I'm just going to knit the next 2 together. And now, as we know, there are 9 stitches in the cable, and we're 1 behind it. So I'm basically just going to do the cable and then knit the 2 together that are right after the cable. Okay, so this one's going this way. We're going to lift the 3 stitches off, keep them in front, knit them off of our cable marker. I'm actually just going to knit 1 more before I do knit 2 together. I don't really like putting it directly beside the cables either, so 1 more, knit 2 together. And knit 9, knit 2 together. And then I'm just going to knit the next 6 stitches. Sorry, 7 stitches, and knit the last 2 stitches in the row together. We're going to do a row of purl stitches. Okay, we're going to do another row of knit stitches with 4 decreases again. This time I'm just going to knit up to 3 stitches before the cable. Okay, I'm going to knit the last 2 away from the cable together. Knit 1, knit through the cable, knit 1 past the cable, knit the next 2 together. I'm just going to knit 6 stitches, knit 2 together, then just knit to almost the end of the row and then knit the last 2 stitches in the row together. So I'm basically just kind of evenly spacing my decreases, but I'm always putting 1 at the end of my row and then 1 on each side of my cable. Then we've got another purl row. Okay, now I'm on another cable row, this cable coming this way, with another 4 decreases. So we're just going to try to space them out as evenly as we can again, keeping them on the outside of the cable and at the one at the back of the hat. Okay, so our next row is going to be another row of just purl all the way around and knit between the cables. Okay, now we've got another knit row, but this one, the decreases are going to, we actually are going to decrease in the cable and only in the cable. So we're going to decrease by knitting these 2 together, these 2 together, and these 2 together, so that our cable that was basically 3 stitches per strand of the braid is going to become 2. So we're just going to knit up to the cable, Okay, so now that we're on the cable to do our decreases, we're just going to knit the first stitch, then knit the next two together. We're going to knit one more stitch, and then knit two together. Then we're going to knit one more stitch, and then knit two together. Perfect. And then we're just going to knit out the end of the row. Okay, so now we're on the purl row, and then this purl row is going to be a little bit different because we only have 2 rows left. We're going to do a purl row and then cast off. But see, if we were to cast off right now, I feel like this braid is just like a little bunchy, like this will stick out here. So I'm going to do one more cable over before we cast off, just so that it'll be more pinched together at the top, and the braid will look cleaner when the hat is pinched together. So I know the rule was to do cables on a knit row, but this is an exception. So we're going to purl up to the cable. Then, because we did those decreases and now our braid is only 6 stitches wide, we're going to only slip 2 stitches over onto our cable needle, not 3. Knit 2. And knit 2 off of this one. Two. And knit 2. And purl to the end of the row. Perfect. There we go. So now it'll be nice and tight at the top. Okay, so to close up the hole in the top, I'm just going to put the string onto my needle. Now see in our cast off how there's an outside and an inside loop and an inside loop. I'm just going to weave through every other outside loop. Cinch it closed, and then I'm going to take my needle and go right into the middle of the hole. Pull my yarn out from the inside and flip the hat inside out. And you can see the cast off is kind of on the inside of the hat. I'm just going to weave around this circle one more time to make sure that it's nice and tightly closed. make sure it's secure. Maybe weave our end a little bit so that when we cut it, I leave a little tail usually so that this knot doesn't come loose. Okay, for this hat, I'm gonna add a little faux fur pom-pom on the top. So I've kept my needle on my string at the bottom. I've tied the hole closed, but I'm just gonna poke it back through. This pom-pom has like a little loop. Oh, here we go. Just gonna go through that little loop and then back through my hole. Pull it tight. Might go through this a couple of times just to make sure that it's on there and not floppy. There's our little loop, as you can see there. And then I'm just gonna tie a nice tight knot. Okay, so for the bottom of this hat, because I made this hat to fold up, when we sew in this end here, we're gonna wanna do it on, so we're gonna want the knot on this outside because we're flipping the brim up. And we're just going to sew these ends in. Okay, so that's everything. I hope you guys learned something, as always. You guys have enough knowledge to move forward and make some toques and keep your noggins warm this winter. If you guys want some more inspiration or knitting patterns, follow me on Instagram, Erin Lisbeth W. I will also put the link to my Instagram in the description to this video. I don't have any other social media, so that's about the only one that you can find me on. But yeah, subscribe to this channel. I'm going to keep trying to put out more tutorial videos as we go along. Leave me a comment and let me know what kind of stuff you guys are looking for. I don't really know if it's more like beginners or intermediate or like a variety of people who are following this channel or who are interested. So I would just really like to know what you guys are interested in seeing. Just like basically if you guys can tell me what you're looking for, then I can kind of work on that type of content and bring it to you. I want to see the stuff you guys are working on, so tag me in anything that you have managed to make, either via my patterns or via a tutorial video. Whatever you got, tag me on Instagram. I love seeing it, and I feel like on a day-to-day basis, I'm just like walking around sucking in inspiration. So if I inspire people or can be any part of them making something that they're really proud of, then that means a lot to me. So I love to see what you guys are doing. I'm not even just saying, like, I'm not just saying that. I fucking love it. I especially love when you guys take one of my patterns and then use better colors than I used and make something that I am like jealous of. And then like, it's funny because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I could for sure just make this myself because it's my own pattern. But at the same time, sometimes I don't always have time to. So then I just sit here being jealous that you guys have a better sweater than I have because you were smarter than me and chose better colors than me. I know that seems ridiculous, but anyways, I love to see it. So that maybe one day when I do have the time, I can be inspired by your color patterns, and then I can make the things that you make out of my patterns that make me jealous of you. I know that seems really dumb.